Imagine if 50 years ago, you and your best friend thwarted your main op who also happened to be your best friend's adoptive brother, who was also a vampire, who led a herd of zombies. And while those 50 years pass and you think he's done, and y'all good, you good for the rest of your life, you become rich. You were living lavishly, nice life. And everything's good until one of your main mans slimes you out for more power. Yep, we're talking about Battle Tendencies today. And this is a continuation of the Everything I Loved About JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series. We're only on part 2. Of course, tomorrow or the day after will probably be part 3. You know, it'll go on. And once it's done, I'll wrap it in a nice little compilation video of all y'all, just so y'all can have something long in like an hour to watch, and I could have more watch hours. It's a fair trade, I think. But jumping back into Battle Tendencies, I was talking about the perspective of Speedwagon, obviously, and really where I stopped, I left some things out. Now, even though over the next 50 years after part 1, Speedwagon would become rich and he would found his own foundation, which ended up helping the Joestars not only through part 2, but all the way through part 6. He and some of his friends, they go to a Mexican pyramid where they find some stone masks. Now, this is where Speedwagon, he makes a dumb, unfortunate move where he contacts his mans straight. So he's like, yo, I need some help with these stone masks. I need to eradicate all of them. Bring some friends. Let's get these shits out of here. And Straight Seal pulls up. But it wasn't to destroy the stone mask. It was to obtain the stone mask. Yep. He waited 50 years to get his hands on another stone mask after seeing what Dio did in part 1. And this is where he started to glazing Dio. Like, he saw the youth and the effectiveness it gave Dio. He saw the powers and the boost it gave Dio, and he wanted a turn. And from there, he wiped everyone there out, including Speedwagon, and then decided anyone who knew about the existence of the mask had to get wiped out. This is where we meet the JoJo of this part, Jonathan Joestar, one of my goats. One of my goats of this series, one of the first JoJos to get me hooked on this series. I love this man so much. But upon meeting Joseph, we also meet Smokey, who got held up by the police. And once he did that, Joseph pulled up, which, mind you, he did not know Smokey by this point. But he pulled up and he was like, yo, what's he being charged for? He didn't even do nothing. And they told him to beat it. They started trying to downplay this 6'5", 245 man standing in front of them. So Joseph, with a little hormone magic, got Smokey out of that jam. And after that, Joseph finds out what happened to Speedwagon, that he was defeated by none other than Straight Soul, someone who he saw as an uncle. So Joseph is mad now, but we don't know what he's going to do. This is our first episode seeing him. What could he possibly do? Well, when Straight Soul finally gets to New York and confronts Joseph, one of Joseph's first reactions is to pull out a damn Tommy gun. And he let that shit sing like he was a prime ice JJ Fish on the scene. And not that many shots landed, but it was enough to send a warning and send a message. What type of message? A message to the civilians of New York that ain't shit safe, not even in the 1930s. But Joseph and Straight Soul have their battle, and not gonna lie, Joseph low-key made light work of that man. To the point where, at the end, Straight Soul tells him some very important, very key information. That he dumped everyone's body into a river just so the beings within the actual stone column wouldn't be awakened. But that wouldn't be enough, that we will find, and we will find that out later. But now we're in Mexico, and this is where Speedwagon has to relive a nightmare of being alive, and where he then asks the man holding him alive, saying, why did you revive me? I wanted to be gone. And this is where we meet someone else, someone a part of the 1938 German party, Rudolf von Stroheim. This is where Stroheim literally just sits there and is like, well, we brought the Pillarmen back because we want to research on them and we want to become the strongest in the entire world for this upcoming world war. You may have heard of it. Like, they even gave the Pillarmen they stole a name, Santana, which this next scene is very interesting. Because while Speedwagon is just sitting there internally tweaking, like, what did they do? He doesn't know what type of being he's messing with. Santana gets out of their container, meaning it's in the open with all of these German soldiers. And once it gets in the open, it was low-key chop cheese from there. It was kind of like watching 2000 Shaq run through your whole defense while you couldn't do anything but stand in the stands and eat your popcorn quietly. And all looked lost until Joseph Joestar, the GOAT, or as I like to call him, this is where we got him, I'm pretty sure, shows up to the base just to stop and save Speedwagon. And we see Joseph, we see a little bit of his hormone abilities on display here, where he actually takes on Santana and he actually doesn't get demolished in a second. So that means he actually has a chance. Okay, a chance was okay. Overstatement. It took him and Stroheim's combined effort, but like their combined effort was like crawling to a door to get them to get that Pillarman in some sun. Like, that was really the best bet that they had, because if they didn't do that, it just would have been chopped liver. Like, if the Pillarmen didn't have a weakness literally to sun, it would have been wraps. GG's. Now, remember earlier when I said Straight So said he dumped all the bodies just so the figures within the column wouldn't wake up? Well, they woke up. And they woke up at perfect time, because this was the time that Joseph had just gotten to Italy to meet up with Speedwagon's contact, Caesar Zeppeli. Let's just all take a second to appreciate Caesar Zeppeli before we get to the very untimely part of his demise. Caesar, why'd you have to be an idiot and just rush in there? That was Loki's dumb as shit. You was still clutch though. Joseph and Caesar are arguing though, because Caesar blames the events of part 1 that happened to his grandfather, where he passed, on Jonathan. He blames them solely on Jonathan. He thinks that his grandfather had nothing to do, where he doesn't know that his grandfather was the one who chose to sacrifice himself. But anyway, they get to the underground cave where they actually see the 3 Pillarmen, and they see the German soldiers' bodies on the floor in mass. And Wamu was wasting no time. He did Caesar the worst way with a slightness, and he was about to do Joseph the worst way, all the way until Joseph says, yo, give me a month. Give me one singular month, and I promise you I'll come back, I'll give you a worthy battle, and I might beat you. Now, mind you, these are almighty, all-powerful Pillarmen. They already knew his game. They knew his tricks. He was a hormone user. They already had counters. But you know what? They said, sure, try it. And then they put a poison ring on not only his throat, but also his heart. Just so if he did decide to, run away, leave the country, never meet them again, they could just, poison him. And this is where we find out the most important thing about part 2, which is the Redstone of Ija, which is the thing that Kars, the leader of the Pillarmen, wants the most by far. But catching back up with Joseph, he is off to go training with Lisa and Caesar, where he goes through grueling training for a few weeks on end, where until the last week, until the rings dissolve and the poison is seeped into his body, he gets a final test against Lisa's servants. Now, while competing that test, AC/DC shows up, and he was not on no bullshit. He got rid of one of Lisa's servants like that. He wanted to see where Joseph was at. He wanted to see his potential, and most importantly, he wanted his almighty fade. And that's what he got. Those two were a battle of wits. It was a very interesting battle. It was actually one of my favorite battles to watch at first, just because of how off-putting it is when you first see it. But Joseph delivered a final blow to him, a striking blow, and he went back to Lisa's castle. But the bad thing is, ECDC wasn't dead. As a matter of fact, he was on his back, clinging, just so he could get back to the castle, because by the time he got back to the castle, he decided he was going to steal the red stone of Aija. Now, Lisa is in possession of the red stone because it literally perfects the stone mask, and it makes whoever puts it on become the ultimate life form. And so, possessing the body of Lisa, he actually took the stone and put it on a shipping cargo cart to go all the way, I'm pretty sure, to Switzerland. And from there, Joseph and Caesar had to exorcise him out of Suzy Q's body, finally getting him out of there. Alright, we're finally getting closer to the end. Now, once they get to Switzerland, they run into the 1938 German party, where they see von Stroheim is fully well and alive. Oh, did I forget to mention? Yeah, he almost, or we thought he died. So the two groups pair up, and now they have the possession of the red stone. But Cards was not taking that lying down. He actually pulled up, and this is where we finally get to see some of his powers, like his bones that stick out of his elbows, that are sharpest, that are probably the sharpest material on earth, that could cut you in an instant. He took a fair amount of people out like that, a fair amount of soldiers out like that, when he cut his way into the room. This is where we see von Stroheim actually go toe-to-toe with the ultimate being Cars. But then again, how much can I say toe-to-toe when all Cars was really after was that stone? Because once he even got a singular bit of possession on that stone, he was out of there like a running back. But you could call Joseph a linebacker the way he was on Cars' ass just for that stone. And it actually ended with Joseph low-key getting a little moral victory for the rest of the humans, taking the stone and Cars tumbling off a cliff, just for him to stand up and start laughing maniacally and walking away. The next day also happened to be Caesar's last.
What?
Okay. I'm done with the jokes. I'm sorry. That was a little bit out of pocket. But the next day, Caesar, he suggests they go blitz Cars before Wamu gets back. And Joseph, being the smart person he is like, obviously that's a fucking trap. They want you to run in there and get fucking killed. So him and Caesar start arguing, and it ends when Caesar just says, you know what, forget y'all, I'm going in there by myself. And from there we get the iconic fight of Caesar versus Wamu, which ends with a very soul-crushing ending.
It's not enough.
Now, before Caesar had passed due to a rock, he did do a few things that you could be proud of him for doing. He stole one of the antidotes from Wamu, making Joseph poison free. He was actually low-key doing Wamu a little dirty at some point, because it wasn't like he got completely shitted on. But it still ended with one outcome of Wamu and Cars walking away and Caesar never walking again. Joseph and Lisa, even in pain and sorrow, decide to continue to go through the place looking for Cars and Wamu, only to find their hundreds of minions, including them. Now, this is where Lisa uses a bluff card and simply says, if we don't return, or this stone don't return, it's gonna blow up. There's a bomb on it. You ain't want to test it, do you? And she also says, you know what, let's just have 2 1v1s. And this is where Cars, he's like, alright, bet. So we get the first 1v1, which was Joseph versus Wamu chariot race. And that was a pure banger. That shit was hard. Still to this day, I find myself watching YouTube clips of that fight just because of how hard it was. I was locked in, completely immersed into the world by this point, and it just immersed me some more just watching that fight. Top 2 fight of the entire part. And it ends very heartfelt with Wamu acknowledging Joseph as a true warrior and Joseph winning and beating Wamu. which left us with Cars versus Lisa Lisa. Except Cars said, fuck you and fuck your morals, and just stabbed Lisa Lisa and took the stone. And the way he was even able to do that was just by putting a light reflection in front of her and then literally coming out of a tree and stabbing her. Like, that's just so crazy. But Joseph pissed now. He has to go chase who he doesn't know it yet. It's his mother dangling from off a tall ledge. In Cars, he wants to play mind games. He wants to get inside Joseph's head. He knows that he's not ready. He's not locked in. At least that's what he believes. Until Joseph starts pulling off crazy schemes. Now, one thing that needs to be remembered about my dog Joseph is that he has always been that. He has always been locked in to the point where a little bit of pressure don't worry him. At least not on the outside. On the inside, because we do see his inner monologue, he was tweaking. But on the outside, he was not worried. And it was even to the point where, by the end of it, Joseph ended up saving his mother and sending Cars into a field of spikes. And that's where this story should end. But it doesn't. Also, did I mention this whole time they're on this big ass ledge? Stroheim and like all of their allies are fighting all of Cars' allies. So now it's just like this big ass war. But Stroheim, he pulls up with this super UV light. And he's about to use it on Cars until Cars turns over, puts on the stone mask at the right time. And I'm guessing the stone was in. And boom. We get a transformation. No longer is this old version of Cars. We get the new Cars. The improved Cars. The ultimate version. Who could do almost anything, including make himself invulnerable to lava. But as soon as Cars gets up, he's like, oh yeah, what was all that shit you was talking now, Joseph? And Joseph runs away. He runs and runs and runs until he gets into a plane and he starts flying away. But Cars, he also can grow wings too. So he's just chasing him. All the way up until Joseph decides to steer into a volcano. All the way down and then jump out. But Cars never knew when he jumped out. He just saw the parachute, so he thought he had been out. But it turns out he was still in the plane, and he used the plane to drive Cars into a volcano, thinking that was it.
It's not enough.
And Joseph was about to literally just walk off, chill out, go get some food. He was probably a little hungry until Cars spouts out the volcano, cuts his hand off, and is now looking down on Joseph for the first time in the entire part. Now, I won't lie, in this second, my heart dropped to my ass because I thought that was it for Joseph. And I really did think that was that, all the way until dumb luck strike again. And Joseph had the red stone of Ija in his hand, in his palm, where Cars had shot, leading to Joseph and Cars both flying upwards into the sky. But Cars' momentum, it sent him so far up that he ended up freezing in space and becoming a rock, effectively making him useless. And Joseph, just by the skin of his teeth, ended up surpassing, slightly beating the ultimate unstoppable being. What a story arc. Now that the recap's out the way, I just want to say, when it comes to part 2, I love basically everything. That's why I even gave y'all a recap like this. Just sitting here recapping it, because almost everything about part 2 was fire to me. When I first watched it, it was the part that got me hooked. So if you still haven't watched JoJo's, or you haven't even gotten to part 2, I would suggest you go watch that. Because this recap, it doesn't even do it all justice, I won't lie. But I think I will give part 2 a smooth 9 out of 10. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We're on the road to 2K. So please like it up, and until next time, peace.